Laughter in the arena. The arena shook with noise. Thousands of aliens cheered, clapped, and shouted as their champion walked into the ring. Her name was Varkala. She was tall, almost 8 feet, and covered in red and black armor. Her long claws tapped the floor with every step. Her sharp teeth showed as she smiled. She looked strong, proud, and full of fire. She turned to the crowd and raised her arms. "Bring me a real challenge," she shouted in her deep voice. "Don't send me more weaklings." The gates on the other side of the arena opened slowly. Out walked a human. He was not big, he was not wearing armor. His name was Marcus. He wore a simple shirt and pants. His eyes looked calm and he walked without fear. The crowd laughed. Loud, harsh, cruel laughter. Some aliens threw food toward him. Others shouted, "Why send a child? Is this a joke? He will die in seconds." Even Varkala laughed. She pointed at Marcus and said, "This is your warrior. This soft-skinned thing, I will break him in one breath." Marcus didn't say a word. He kept walking until he stood across from her in the middle of the arena. He looked up at her and said softly, "Are you ready?" Varkala growled. "I was born ready, human." The bell rang. The fight had started. Varkala moved fast. Her claws swung toward Marcus like knives. But in a blink, Marcus stepped to the side. She missed. She turned quickly, but he was already moving again. Left, right, then behind her. He was quick, too quick. She roared and attacked again, this time with both hands. She used her full strength, her full speed. Marcus stepped close, lowered his body, and with one smooth move, he flipped her. The entire arena went silent. Varkala hit the ground with a loud thud. Dust rose in the air. Her body didn't move. She was awake, but shocked. Her eyes stared at the sky. She could not understand what had just happened. Marcus stood beside her. Calm. Quiet. He didn't raise his arms. He didn't smile. He simply looked down and said, "It's over." The silence was heavy. No one spoke. No one moved. Then, slowly, some gasps came from the crowd. Then whispers. Then the laughter returned. But this time, not for joy. It was nervous, confused, and broken. The people didn't know what they had seen. Varkala sat up slowly. She touched her shoulder. It hurt. She looked at Marcus again. He was already walking away. "Wait," she called. He turned but said nothing. She stood up. Her pride burned, her heart full of questions. "What was that?" she asked. "What move was that?" Marcus paused. "Control," he said. "Something your kind doesn't understand." He walked out of the arena without another word. Varkala stood in the center of the ring, her chest rising and falling with heavy breath. The crowd was still confused. No one cheered, no one celebrated. For the first time in her life, Varkala had lost. And not just lost. She had been defeated in one move by someone she had laughed at. She looked at the spot where Marcus had stood. She didn't feel hate. She didn't feel anger. She felt something new, something she couldn't name. Fear? Respect? Curiosity? Whatever it was, it stayed with her as the arena lights dimmed and the crowd slowly left. That night, in her private chamber, Varkala couldn't sleep. Her body was strong, but her mind was restless. Again and again, she remembered the human's face, calm, focused, without fear. She punched the wall. The stone cracked. "What kind of power is that?" she whispered. Outside, stars shone in the sky. But deep inside Varkala's heart, something had begun. A fire not of rage, but of need. She needed to understand. She needed to find that human again, and next time, she wouldn't laugh. The warrior's shame. Varkala sat alone in the shadows of her chamber, her fists clenched so tightly the metal on her gloves creaked. The strongest warrior of the Vrax Empire, brought down by a single human in front of the entire galaxy. Her people once sang her name in battle songs. Now they whispered behind her back. Some laughed. Others looked away. Even her students avoided her gaze. She smashed the mirror in front of her. The glass shattered across the floor just like her pride. But the pain in her heart wasn't just from defeat. It was from confusion. She had trained in over 70 combat forms. She had fought beasts, with 6 arms and warlords with weapons that burned the skin. She had never lost, and then, him. That human with soft skin and calm eyes. He didn't roar, didn't brag, didn't even swing a punch. Just one move. She had watched the battle, replay 100 times, slowed it down, paused it at every second. It didn't make sense. His legs had bent low, his arms had turned lightly, and her own body had worked against her. It was as if she fell by her own weight. No force, just precision. She couldn't accept it. Her training partners lined up again the next day. She crushed them one by one. Each time she heard their bones crack and saw their fear. But she felt no satisfaction, no honor. It was like she was hitting shadows. None of them were him. Varkala stood before the Grand Council of Vrax to request another match. But they rejected her. A second fight with a human? One elder scoffed. You think the galaxy wants to see you humiliated again? Another elder leaned forward. You had your chance. You lost. Varkala's claws dug into her own palm, but she bowed her head and said nothing. That night, she packed her things, in silence. No guards, no glory, no banners. Just her armor, a few credits, and a question burning in her soul. She would find Marcus, not for revenge, but for answers. She left Vrax in a quiet ship, not registered, not tracked. She flew far, into human space, searching. Most humans were shocked to see a Vrax warrior outside the war zones. Some ran, some pointed weapons. But she didn't fight them. She asked a single question everywhere she went. Do you know Marcus of Earth? At first, no one did. Then, one old farmer on a dusty moon tilted his head and said, The quiet one? Helps fix water pipes and builds houses? Yeah. Lives down by the river. Varkala stared. That was him? She traveled there at once. From a distance, she saw him. No armor, no weapons, just clothes full of dirt and hands busy digging a garden bed. He moved slowly, but with purpose. He helped an old woman carry wood. He knelt to fix a child's broken toy. He smiled softly, never loud, never proud. This was not a warrior. This was nothing like what she expected. But the memory of his move haunted her bones. Her body still remembered the exact way it had slammed into the ground. She followed him silently for 2 days, staying hidden in the trees and hills. Watching. Waiting. But there were no signs of training, no sparring, no signs of power. Only one thing was clear. He was never careless. Every motion had balance. Every step had timing. Even lifting a basket of apples seemed like a measured action. Was this his secret? Varkala had crushed thousands. But this man, he controlled the world around him without force. She realized something terrible. Maybe the humans weren't weak. Maybe they were different. And if Marcus was just one of them, then how many more were out there like him? She sat on a rock that night, staring at the stars. Her claws rested on her knees. For the first time in her life, Varkala wasn't thinking about winning. She was thinking about learning. But deep in the galaxy, not everyone had forgotten her shame. Others had watched her fall. And some wanted to make sure she never rose again. Trouble was coming. And this time, it wasn't in the arena. The secret of his movements. Varkala sat motionless under the thick trees near the quiet human colony. The ground beneath her was soft with moss, the air filled with the smell of flowers and fresh soil. She had tracked prey before, wild beasts, desert raiders, even enemy champions, but never like this. Never someone so ordinary. Marcus moved through the small village with slow, patient steps. No guards followed him. No one bowed to him. He was not treated like a hero. In fact, he blended in so well, most people barely noticed him. And yet, To Varkala's trained eyes, there was something unnatural about him, something hidden. She watched him lift a fallen child with care, his feet perfectly placed, his center of balance always steady. She watched him chop wood in a rhythm that never changed, precise, balanced, efficient. She watched him walk across slippery rocks in the river, never slipping once. To the others, he was just a kind man, but to her, every move was a lesson. She narrowed her eyes. "He's not just moving," she whispered. "He's measuring." For 3 days and nights, Varkala followed silently, never closer than the trees, never farther than her curiosity could stand. She saw no weapons on him, no armor, no signs of training. But the way he lived, the way he stood, the way he even breathed, it was too perfect, not forced, not tense, just controlled. One evening she found herself standing in the same field where Marcus was planting crops. She had not planned to reveal herself, but her curiosity had grown too loud. "You fight like you garden," she said aloud. Marcus didn't flinch. He finished planting a seed, covered it with dirt, then looked up at her calmly. "I wondered when you'd come out." She blinked. "You knew I was watching?" He nodded. "Since the first day." "Why didn't you stop me?" He stood and dusted off his hands. "You didn't come to kill me. You came to understand." Varkala stepped closer, her claws tapping against her armor. "What kind of fighter are you? You beat me without strength, without rage. What are you?" Marcus looked toward the sun setting over the trees. "I'm a human who learned that force isn't always power. Control is. Timing is. Stillness is." She frowned. "Stillness? That sounds like weakness." He looked at her, and for the first time his voice grew firmer. "That's why you lost." Varkala felt something stir inside her. It wasn't anger. It was something worse. Truth. "I want you to teach me," she said suddenly. "Not because I want revenge, not because I want to beat you. I want to know what you know." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. "Why, now?" She looked down at her hands. "Because ever since that day in the arena, my body has healed, but my spirit hasn't." Silence passed between them. Then Marcus said, "I will teach you, but not in anger, not for violence. If you want to learn, you must let go of pride." Varkala stepped forward and dropped to one knee. "Then I will leave my pride in the soil." Marcus nodded once. "Come tomorrow, at sunrise." That night, Varkala didn't sleep. She didn't punch walls. She didn't scream into the dark. Instead, she sat under the stars, watching the wind bend the trees, and for the first time in her life she tried to listen to stillness. But far away on a dark moon, whispers of her presence had reached the wrong ears. The Varax Council had declared her a traitor for bowing before a human. And now, assassins were on their way. Shadows. Of strength, lessons of silence. The first rays of the sun stretched across the quiet field, painting gold across the sky. Varkala stood barefoot on the soft earth, her armor left behind for the first time in her life. She felt strange, lighter, but exposed. She had never trained without armor, never stood without a weapon. But Marcus had told her, "If you want to learn, come as you are. Not as a warrior, as a student." He was already there, standing still like a statue in the wind. His eyes were closed, his breathing slow. For a long time he didn't speak. Varkala shifted impatiently. "Is this training? Standing like stone?" Marcus finally opened his eyes. "You stand strong, Varkala, but your mind screams too loud to hear the fight around you." She frowned but stayed quiet. He moved slowly, showing her the first technique. Not a strike, not a kick, a step, just a step. 1 foot in, body lowered, weight balanced. She followed and fell. Again. She tried again, and fell again. "You are not fighting the enemy," he said calmly. "You are fighting yourself." Hours passed. No shouting, no violence, just silence, motion, breath. Her muscles ached, not from combat but from control. Her heart burned, not from anger, but from effort. Every movement felt unnatural. Every pause felt like weakness. And yet slowly, her body began to respond. She fell less. She moved smoother. Days turned to weeks. Each morning, she returned. Each time Marcus gave her a new lesson. How to wait, how to breathe, how to feel the energy of her opponent before they moved. These were things she had never been taught, and something strange began to happen. The wildfire in her heart, the one that always roared for glory and battle, began to calm. It became a steady flame, a quiet strength. She was becoming something new, not less fierce, but more focused. One evening, as they stood side by side watching the stars, she asked, "Why did you fight in the arena that day?" Marcus was quiet. For a moment then said, "Because Earth needed to send a message. We are not loud, but we are not weak." She looked at him with new respect. "You don't speak much, but when you do, every word hits like a hammer." He smiled faintly. Words, like strikes, should be used wisely. Their peace didn't last. One night the trees shook. Animals ran. The air grew cold. Marcus and Varkala turned at the same time. They felt it, a presence nearby. Unnatural, cold, trained, assassins. From the shadows, 3 cloaked figures stepped into the moonlight. Vrax blades in their hands, eyes glowing under their hoods. One of them pointed at Varkala. "You kneel before a human. You are no longer one of us." She stepped forward, claws ready. "Then come and take my name." But Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "Let them strike first." They moved together, like wind and rock, like fire and water. The assassins attacked fast, but Marcus moved faster, dodging with perfect timing, redirecting their blades into the ground. Varkala, now trained in control, fought beside him, not with rage but with precision. Together they stood against death, and won. As the final assassin fell, Varkala stood breathless. She looked at Marcus, sweat dripping down her face. "You knew they would come," she said. He nodded. "They always do when fear becomes respect." She looked at the fallen assassins, then at the peaceful stars above. The arena had once broken her, but in this silent field, she had found something greater than victory. She had found transformation. And now, the galaxy would feel it too. A warrior, reborn Varkala, stood at the edge of the river, watching her reflection ripple in the water. The face staring back no longer looked like the proud, untouchable warrior the Vrax Empire once praised. This face held something deeper: calm, power, and purpose. Her claws rested gently against her legs, not raised for battle. Her eyes no longer burned with rage but with quiet fire. Something inside her had changed. She turned as Marcus approached from behind. He carried no weapon, as always, only a wooden staff he used to guide his steps across the uneven path. They had trained together for weeks now. Every morning had begun, with silence, movement, breathing, and every night had ended with reflection. "You've changed," Marcus said softly. "I know," Varkala replied. "But will your people see it?" She looked away. "They don't want change, they want blood." Marcus sat beside her on the grass. "Then maybe it's time to show them something else." That night, she walked alone into the forest, letting her thoughts run wild. She remembered the day she first mocked humans, the crowd, the laughter, her own pride. Back then she thought strength meant breaking things, bones, walls, enemies. Now she knew the truth. Real strength was not in crushing, but in choosing not to. She returned to Marcus before sunrise with a new fire in her voice. "I want to go back," she said. "To the Vrax Empire?" he asked. She nodded. "Not to fight, to teach." Marcus didn't answer at first. He looked at her, searching her eyes for any sign of the old warrior. the one who chased glory and feared shame. But she was gone. "All right," he said. "Then we go together." They flew quietly through the outer rim, reaching the borders of Vrak space under dark skies. Rumors of her betrayal had already spread far. Her people had branded her a coward, a traitor. Some said she had fallen under a human spell. Others claimed she had lost her mind. But when she landed in the central plaza, heads turned, voices dropped, the crowd gathered. This was the moment everyone had waited for. The disgraced warrior had returned, alone, unarmed, without armor. A council guard approached her. "You are not welcome here." "I don't need to be," she replied. "But I have something your empire forgot." "What's that?" the guard spat. She lifted her hand and placed it gently on her chest. "Wisdom." The crowd laughed at first. Loud, mocking, just like she once had in the arena. But Varkala didn't flinch. She stepped into the heart of the square and raised her voice, not in challenge, but in truth. "I was once like you. I laughed at the quiet. I worshipped only force. I believed victory came from shouting louder, hitting harder, but I was wrong." Murmurs spread. Some booed, some listened. Humans are not weak. They are not soft. They are not afraid. They are measured. They are still. And that stillness hides something sharper than any blade. The old war masters watched from the balconies above, their faces hard. They didn't want her message. They wanted her blood. But Varkala didn't stop. "I was defeated by one man, one silent move. But instead of hiding, I learned. I trained. I became stronger, not by crushing bones, but by listening to the strength inside me." Someone in the crowd shouted, "Then prove it. Fight one of us." Varkala stepped forward. "No. The old me would fight to prove herself. The new me stands without fear, because true power needs no roar." Suddenly the silence was louder than any battle cry, and in that moment something shifted. Not everyone believed her. But some heard her. Some saw the change. And that was enough. As night fell, she walked away from the square, not in defeat, but in quiet triumph. Marcus waited at the ship. "You didn't fight," he said. "I didn't have to," she replied. And for the first time, the warrior known across the galaxy for violence walked in peace, her spirit unshaken, her heart stronger than ever. One move that shook the stars. A silent message pulsed through the galaxy's deep channels, bouncing from one system to another. "The Vrak's assassin squad has failed. Varkala lives. The human lives." And they fought together. In the grand halls of the Galactic Senate, leaders from dozens of species gathered, their voices sharp, their faces tense. Screens showed recordings of Varkala's speech in the square, followed by the secret footage of the failed attack on her and Marcus. The room buzzed with disbelief. A Vrak's warrior trained by a human? She spoke of peace, of strength, through silence. They fought without rage, and won. Back on the quiet planet, Varkala stood at the edge of a cliff, overlooking the green valley below. The wind brushed through her hair, and for the first time in her life, she allowed herself to feel peace, not as a weakness, but as a reward earned. Marcus joined her, his arm still bandaged from the fight. "You've started something bigger than you know." She looked at him. "I didn't want to start anything. I only wanted to understand." He nodded. "That's why it worked." Ships began to land in the fields below. Not warships, but small transports, curious ones. Pilots and warriors from different species stepped out. Some Vraks, some human, some from races that had once hated each other. They came with one question. "Teach us." The quiet colony that had once been unknown now became a meeting point, a place where strength wasn't measured by who shouted the loudest or who hit the hardest, but by who listened, learned, and moved with purpose. A Vrak's elder visited in secret, cloaked and alone. She approached Varkala with slow steps and said, "The council still wants your name erased, but the people, they're listening to you now." Varkala replied calmly, Then erase my name. I'm no longer who I was. The elder paused, then asked, "And who are you now?" Varkala smiled gently. "A student, a teacher, a warrior who knows when not to strike." The elder left without another word. As night fell, the stars above sparkled brighter, as if watching in silence. Varkala and Marcus stood beside the fire, surrounded by those they had inspired. A young alien girl stepped forward. "Is it true you won with just one move?" she asked Marcus. He smiled faintly. "No," he said. "The move was just the spark. The real victory came when she stopped fighting me and started listening." Varkala looked into the fire, then out into the dark sky. That one move had changed her. It had cracked her pride, shattered her shame, and revealed a strength she never knew existed. Now that strength would echo across worlds, not through war, but through wisdom. And from that day forward, stories were told, not just of the warrior who fell, but of the human who didn't need to roar to shake the stars.